when did you start to realize the scope of what you had just done in terms of when did it set in that I've just bought something that has some really significant history to it? Was there a moment that you just went, wow, what did I just get myself into?
Yeah, there was. But that was because I really did not know what I had bought. Okay, I hadn't seen it all. I hadn't evaluated it all. And it took us over a year to unpackage and look at all these big cartons that our team put the stuff in. There was a lot of junk there, but there was some pretty nice stuff, too.
Yeah.
So it turned out okay for me, but I didn't know. So, yes, there was a long period of waiting and wondering, what have I gotten myself into? But it was a good thing.
Very neat. Now, when you were working with Lou and Carl, was your interaction with them basically then just the negotiation, or did you guys, talk more as you guys started, wrapping up the store? Do you have any favorite stories about either of them, or was it once the deal was signed, you chatted a little bit, but nothing serious?
We did not develop a long-term relationship, no. But we did develop a nice on the moment relationship. And we went to lunch one day, and Lou took us to lunch at a restaurant or a club or wherever it was. And we ordered our lunch. And Linda and I, my wife, we decided that, well, we'd like a cocktail after all of this. And so we told Lou that we'd like one. Oh, well, I don't drink, but I'll have something, but I don't drink liquor. We said, okay, fine. So when the waitress came over, he looked at her and he said, I'm going to have my usual. And boy, he had a brandy. That's a story I'll never forget.
Seems like that fits the personality pretty well from all the other stories that are floating around, but it sounds like it was possible to have a really good working relationships with them. I've always heard they were either hot or cold, and it seems like...
I'll tell you something on that one.
Sure.
People were calling, customers, while I was there, and he'd answer the phone. No, I'm sorry. We're closed. I'm doing inventory. It's going to take me quite a while. Talk to you later. Bye. Click. Well, he wasn't about to tell him he had sold it. That was one. While we were there, a guy came into the store and he saw what he wanted. And he looked at it and asked Lou how much, and Lou gave him the price. And he came back with a counter offer. You know what Lou did? You've never heard this? It happened repeatedly, quite often. You don't like my price, there's the door. Go on home, take your business elsewhere. And he'd push them out the door and send them away.
Well, I think they must have had some idea that they were sitting on some pretty special pieces, and that, over the years they must have kind of figured out that, wait a second, nobody else has this stuff. And so I guess in a way they kind of had the right to do that.
Yeah, I guess so. But he really did not know what they had.
Really?
No, a lot of it had gone out the back door.
Okay.
We found, unfortunately.
Okay.
And he had no idea what was still there and the value of it or the rarity of it. Call it whatever you want.
Sure.
But it was an interesting transaction, and we had an interesting time with it here in Detroit once we got it back.
Yeah, let's move to that for a little bit. You and your team painstakingly, and I mean painstakingly, documented just about every inch of the store in New York when you were packing up and subsequently moving the store. What were your intentions when you brought it back to Detroit? Was your intention to try and recreate the New York store, or did you have your own plans in mind at that point?
At that point, I really did not know, because I did not know what the product was. And no, we did not do an inventory before we shipped it. We were just interested in getting it put together in larger cartons, these shipping cartons, to get it on the trucks and get it back here where we could take it to our new warehouse and start unpacking and taking inventory. Well, the more we got into it, trying to do an inventory, even then was an impossible thing. There was so much stuff. So we just put it up on the shelves, and we said, well, we've got to dispose of it, so we might as well. Let me just break at this moment and say that when we bought Madison Hardware, I also bought all the right title and ownership of the trademark and the name and everything else, so that we could go by their name if we wanted to, which we did.
Sure.
And that's really what happened. And it was a big learning experience for all of us.
Sounds like it.
It was a fun thing. It was a hobby thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. As you guys sorted out the inventory once you made it back to Detroit, what were some of the interesting and your favorite pieces that you discovered in these 16 semi-loads of inventory? There had to be some pieces that your jaw just dropped and you go, oh my gosh, I had no idea.
A lot of it was duplication of stuff. If you're talking about a one-of-a-kind something, I really don't remember any of those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of train stuff. We had a lot of factory part bins, just loaded with parts. Mm-hmm. It was that kind of a situation. Mm-hmm. There were some train boxes, train sets,
sure,
things like that. But nothing of a major, spectacular finding. Nothing.
No factory sealed blue comets or anything like that. Was there anything that you just kind of, as they unpack things, that you just saw it and I thought, I'd really just like to have that for my collection? Was there anything, even if it wasn't significant, that just stuck out to you and you thought, you know what, this would be really neat to have in my collection? Anything like that?
Well, there could be pieces in here, right? Well, no, we had a train layout down at Madison Hardware, a pretty good sized train layout. And most of that was made up of stuff that came from Madison Hardware. The sign that was on the front of the building in New York, we took that down and brought it back.
Yeah.
And we had this warehouse in downtown Detroit where the fourth floor, the whole floor was Madison Hardware. And there was an elevator to go up, and at the elevator doors on the first floor, we hung and illuminated that huge sign, Madison Hardware.
That sign has become quite an icon in the industry, and the sign was sold in 2001 now, and it resides in a private collection now. I think.
Does it really?
The sign is in the private collection.
Well, I'm happy to hear that.
But no, it is. I have heard through a few sources that the gentleman that owns it now will probably die with the sign. It is probably the crown jewel of his collection, and he has been offered a few times significant amounts of money to let it go, and he won't let it go because he cares so much about that sign. But you guys didn't just take the sign; you took the front door, the back door, the keys. Yeah. When you guys closed up shop, you guys closed up shop in New York.
Yeah, the front door, had signs on it and the glass and what have you, and we didn't want to disturb any of that. And so you're right, we did.
And the doors are now in a private collection and very well cared for from what I've heard and what I've seen. And so it's got to be neat that even after these items have passed from your hands, that they're in the hands of guys that truly care about the history of Madison Hardware, and the fact that you played a role in safely removing that history and transporting it to a location where there wasn't harm done to it, so to speak. You know, it could have been very easily that the store had just closed and the sign disappeared into oblivion and everything else just gets scattered to the four winds right there in New York.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that you breathed a second life into the store.
Well, the person that I sold it to, and I don't know who owns it all today, so I'm not going to mention any names.
We'll talk about it after the audio shuts off, because I know where some of the pieces are.
Okay. But I did sell the pieces to a guy who was going to take like a museum and put it back together for the public to look at.
You sold a lot of your larger items in the early 2000s. You ran into some health complications, and so, you know, you sold off most of Madison hardware and quite a few of your cars, and subsequently you've started to recollect most of that in some way, shape, or form. After those auctions, though, clearly, you know, we're sitting here in this train room. You've held on to a bunch of pieces still. What are some pieces that you didn't send to auction that are still very special to you that you've held on to?
Yeah, I have them in a warehouse out in Livonia.
Okay.
And there are pieces in here, you know, that I've kept. But, yeah, I did. I got very ill in 2000 and almost died. Mm-hmm. And I was in a wheelchair on oxygen 24 hours a day. And it was not a fun time, and it kind of scared me, because I had so much stuff I really shouldn't be hanging on to it. But as I got better, then I got crazy again, and I started collecting. So I did, and I collected a lot of stuff. And that was during the time that I was president and owner of Lionel. I did a lot of that. So...
Yeah. What are some of your favorite pieces that you have left? What pieces have meaning to you? I'm sure, you know, we're sitting here looking around the train room, and I mean, this is a huge room, and there are so many pieces in here, and really, if you've ever seen photos of Dick's collection was a really, really deep collection. You know, I'm sure most of the pieces in here have a story, as most people's collections do. A lot of pieces have stories. You know,
yes and no. There's one. Well, the Madison cars. When I was a kid, back in the early 40s, I would drool over these Madison cars and want to have them. Well, I have collected them all, and I'm trying to find the right one. Oh, here we are. Joshua Lionel Cowan car.
Mm-hmm.
Richard Kughn car. Mazone car. Raphael car. These are very significant cars, heavyweights.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lot of fun collecting those. I love these kinds of product. Mm-hmm. So to me, those are significant to my heart.
This has been a Lionel Collectors Club of America production, where we are constantly striving to bring our members, friends, and fans the most updated information and communications for all things Lionel.